So if you have a 9 to 5 job and you currently feel that God is telling you to quit your job, I want you to pay attention to this video and I want you to listen to everything and learn from my own mistake. Because when God is telling you that you should quit your job, you need to understand what exactly He is saying. Now let me share a quick story with you. Some years ago, I felt God was telling me to quit my job. And when I prayed about it, I knew God was telling me that I should leave that job. And I left that job. Guess what? I didn't get another job. God told me what next to do. But do you know what? I realized something. There were things I should have known before quitting that job. And because I did not know them, I went into a season of drought, a season of severe famine. Let me explain this very, very well. Most people that start a 9 to 5 are here. You're here currently. One big mistake you're currently making is that you feel this job, the boss, the company you're currently working for, is your source. Whether you like it or not, this company is your source. Now, this is God here telling you that you should quit your job. But the problem here is this. The problem why most of us don't agree or decide to is because we are not sure about this. God is saying I should quit my job. God, how do I get paid? God, how do I renew my rent? And most times God is always telling you to quit your job when your rent is almost due, and that rent, trust me, your current salary cannot even take care of the rent. Your bills are piling up, and that is when God is telling you to quit your job. So the question you always have for God is, I don't think this is the right time to be doing that because that doesn't sound wise. And God will keep insisting, quit the job. I was talking to a pastor once and he told me that no, that I shouldn't do it that way. That when God tells you something, you don't jump into it immediately. And honestly, he was very, very, very wrong. Because when God tells you, do this, the first thing you need to do is walk in obedience. The second thing most people don't do is they don't understand. They don't walk in understanding. Because it's that understanding that makes this easier. So you might currently have a job and you're not working in understanding. And this is why you find it very difficult for believing God that when you quit your job, God is going to take care of you. Now, what is the first step in understanding? The first step in understanding is establish from day one. If you have a job, establish from day one who is your source. If you say God is your source, most people will say that, oh, God is my source. But in all honesty, God is not your source. In practicality, God is not your source. Because if this salary here stops, tell me, are you sure that God will provide for you? If you can't answer that question, trust me, when you quit this job, you're going to enter a season of darkness. So how do you establish your source? What you will need to understand is that currently your source is your boss or the company you are working with. Admit that. Then establish the fact that God is your source. And I'm switching from my boss being my source to God being my source. Now let me tell you what that means. That means I am not limited to earning monthly. If God is now my source, I am not limited to earning monthly. If God is now my source, I am not limited. Maybe it's a weekly pay you're getting. I am not limited to earning weekly. If God is my source. Second, my company doesn't have control over my finances. God is my source. The third most important thing you will need to know after all this is understand that for God to be my source, I need to operate in a different system. Because this system doesn't compensate me properly. It doesn't compensate me for my time. I cannot determine how much I am being paid. This salary is not the right justification for the effort, for the value I bring into the workplace. You don't need to argue with people about increasing your salary because most people think that God is their source. But they are very quick to move to another job because the pay is higher, not understanding that the system that God establishes to compensate you might not be a salary. Like I said, God can. If God is your source, you don't necessarily need to be paid monthly. You don't necessarily need to be paid weekly. And there is no fix to what comes in as income. This is what I consider a God system. So, if you don't from now have that mindset that God is your source and I want to operate on a different system, there is going to be problems. It's going to be very, very hard. You're going to go into a season of darkness, a season of rejection, dejection, frustration, because you just can't reconcile how God is going to provide for you. And this is very, very, very key. Now, what does it mean for you to operate in God being your source? Let's break it down again. If I want to operate in a God system, I will need to understand this. I will need to understand that God has currently given me money. Yes, your skills, your skills and your experiences are considered money. Now, what I said is these are considered money. I didn't say they are considered cash. But the only way for me to convert this money, that is this knowledge and skills and experience, is for me to understand how to start solving problems. Because if currently I am an accountant, I'm using this accountant as an example. If currently I am into real estate, if currently I am a professional, I have knowledge, skills and experiences that can solve problems for people. And this is really how you become financially free. Because if you're financially free, trust me, one thing you will know above all things is that when I am moving from company A to company B, even though the salary is more, I know one thing, that the money that comes from God being my source is not dependent on the salary. I am just here in this company just to impact value. What I receive from my source is more than what I receive from my salary. So an accountant that says that God is his source will understand what it means to solve micro problems for people and get paid for it. We are living in an era where it's very, very easy to package, position a solution to small businesses that have small problems that need to be solved. And we are in the best era for us to be directed by God and for God to walk through us. It's easier now, but with all the ease and all the tools and platforms that God has ordained or taking over, because we're taking over platforms, we're taking over tools, with everything, we still see the restriction and we walk in lack and we walk in fear. And we need to come out from that. And coming out from that is very, very critical. It took me a while to understand this because I walked in fear for a long time. I said, oh God, you're my source, God, you're my source. But every time the bills started piling, I was like, man, God, why would you allow me to go through this? Lord, it's obvious that you cannot take care of me. That was literally what I was saying. Because every time we come to God to complain, remember that God is almighty. What we are actually saying is that, God, you have failed in your responsibility as God. If I were in your own position, I think I would have done it better. So, going back to a salary and depending on the salary is just telling God that I can do it better. And this is something God doesn't really like. Now, an accountant, like I said, an accountant is here. And he decides to start solving micro problems for people. The first level is understanding what is called micro consulting. That is one thing God is going to help you do. I say this as a level 1 because there are other levels, but let's start from level 1, micro consulting. Micro consulting is simply solving micro problems for people, and why they will pay for this is because it will create big issues later. Read the Bible very well, and if you read the book of Genesis chapter 40, Joseph solved the problem for kings. One thing you will need to understand is, how do I start solving problems for kings? If you check my other videos, you understand this thing is very, very scriptural and deep. You will need to start identifying kings' problems, and you need to start solving them based on the knowledge, the skills, and the experiences you have. So, can this work for every profession? Can this work if you are in tech? Yes. Can this work if you are in human resource? Yes. You can still use the same process. You can still solve small problems, and identifying God as your source. You are not limited, that's the right word, in earning monthly, waiting for the salary, because God will provide for you because of the knowledge and the skills and the experiences you have. That's really why that story is in the Bible about the parable of talents. So most people bury the knowledge, the skills, and the experience they have. Now, this can work for any profession. Now, if you are interested in understanding how to take this, your current knowledge, your skills, and your experience, and start solving small problems for companies, identifying the kings, and attracting them to you, I want you to join this 5 weeks program. The link is in the comment section. You can apply there. Please, application doesn't mean you're going to be accepted. So what we need is 5 people, because we want to keep it as small as possible so that everyone will understand what they need to do in this 5 weeks and the actions they need to take. So please click the link, apply. If you're the kind of person we will want to work with, we'll just get back to you with the details in the comment section. So click that link and then you can apply there. I'll see you in the next video.